Welcome.
The Pathology Innovation Collaborative Community is a regulatory science initiative that aims to facilitate innovations in pathology, as well as advance safety and effectiveness evaluation. The PI Collaborative Community aims to harmonise approaches to speed delivery to patients through collaboration in the pre-competitive space. The PI-CC is open to all stakeholders, public or private, including but not limited to academia, industry, healthcare providers, patients, and advocacy groups. Meetings of this kind are an example of lawful activity under federal antitrust law because the focus of the meeting is on government action or policy, including the industry's responses or positions taken with respect thereto. However, antitrust monitoring is needed for companies' own protection, since they are direct competitors meeting together. These meetings need to stay within protected subject matters and need to be monitored so that they do not stray off into inappropriate areas, such as pricing and price terms, sales and service territories for particular products, customers and customer territories, each company's individual decisions regarding selection of suppliers or customers, marketing plans and especially future marketing plans or new product offerings, other proprietary or competitively sensitive information. Today's meeting will follow the written agenda, and there will be no discussion of pricing or other prohibited topics. If the discussion veers into those topics, we will terminate the discussion. If you have any questions or concerns about the propriety of a discussion, please raise it immediately, and we will take a break to determine how best to proceed. The Medical Device Innovation Consortium acts as the formal convener, and we will follow their conflict of interest policy. For additional information, we defer to our Code of Conduct and our website, www.pathologyinnovationcc.org. We look forward to moving the field forward.
Are you recording? Wonderful. All right. Hi, Doc. Thank you for joining. All right, there's Esther, there's Noor, there's Julia. Awesome. Let's get started. So we have a packed agenda, and I would really like to hopefully get through and leave some time in the end. Can you see the slides? Hopefully. So FDA. We start with our friends. I think the FDA team may join a little bit, but let's start with some of the updates. Almost hot off the press is a spotlight called Digital Health Regulatory Science Research Opportunities. It's a booklet containing many, many different things, activities of the agency in and outside their walls. And importantly, there's digital pathology mentioned in there. This would have not been considered meaningful a few years ago, but now it's defined, at least from a regulatory perspective, what digital pathology means. And you see some of the near-term and long-term elements here. And, we're going to paste these documents in the chat as they come along. But just sort of a pointer, and of course, collaborative communities I mentioned, and patient-generated health data, etc. So that's a quick update. October 27th was the release date. Second update was that on November 10th, so that was in between our two steering committee meetings, was a collaborative community town hall meeting with two panel sessions. And in panel one, position one was Pathology Innovation Collaborative Community. They select this apparently by overall contribution. So myself and Brandon were presenting. I think it was well received. We received a couple of comments. There were close to, I think, 150 or so people on the call. So this was FDA internal. It's the internal town hall meeting where they updated on various activities. And you see there's some of the other collaborative communities that were included in this panel. There were interesting questions, especially also from within the agency about AI and ML applications. Next item, also just released, is the modeling and simulation approach to help with regulation. So this is, of course, a regulatory scientific approach that is not new, where you use, for example, in all these different modalities and technologies, so epidemiology, molecular docking, read across models, to have in the various stages from pre to post-market surveillance used by the different subdivisions in the FDA, the use of models and simulations during the regulatory processes. Very important document, especially when it comes to ground truth or data assessments. So if you haven't seen this, please take a look. The next program, probably everyone on this call has heard this MDDT designation several times. What's new, we haven't reviewed this in a while, is that there are a few new designations, especially across the different subcategories. So the most recent one is a chemical risk calculator for color additives. So while this is not necessarily directly related to devices, color and of course digital pathology are related. And this is a non-clinical assessment model, or NAM, to conduct screening, in this case here for, of course, all risk assessments. So that was the most recent MDDT, and it may help people who work on MDDTs or conceptualize what it would take to build such tools and what that entails. Next topic, also a important topic here, cybersecurity. This was an update on November 15th. The medical device cybersecurity is, of course, an important issue related to healthcare privacy data. And you see that by now, the cybersecurity page has been in effect for a while. We get back to this topic in just a moment when we talk about MDIC. And I believe Noor is on the call, so she will say something about that in the MDIC section. But if you look at the different subsections on the page from the FDA cybersecurity, you see that this goes already beyond just sort of a buzzword. So I'm in a firm belief, and I think you will see when you look through the pages that there will be probably a cybersecurity draft guidance coming soon, and there's clear reports and white papers out there. The next news, which is November 18th, many of you have probably heard or seen it in the news. One of the directors of the FDA, Pazdur, has made an official statement. This was as part of the Friends of Cancer Research annual meeting. We get to that in a second as well, where the FDA will look into a certain extension or expansion of the companion diagnostics program. And it's a pilot program that would try to define minimal performance criteria so that you can use other assays as opposed to just the one or multiple approved companion diagnostics. Very controversial program, definitely forward-looking. We will hope to be able to share a few additional news. Several professional societies are engaging currently in several attempts to change companion diagnostic paradigms. This is definitely one that may resonate with the FDA. So more to come, and we're looking forward, of course, to contribute. So probably if details become available, we will do a project around this. One new or novel center, which is the DHCOE, or Digital Health Center of Excellence, has gotten a page with the different branches and the documents related to these branches. So for example, a recent digital health policy navigator, very important tool, has launched, that was launched initially September 27th. And there are very interesting approaches on how to move policy forward. There was also a final guidance under the DHCOE, which is the clinical decision support software. So that's different than support tools. So this is, of course, cross and linking to software as a medical device. And part of that is summarized in learning objective videos that are now available on YouTube. So please take a look. I think the links will be showing up in the chat momentarily. The overall DHCOE is, of course, multiple branches interconnecting many of the different centers. But one of the designated components is certain tools and elements. One is that they maintain a catalog of regulatory science tools that help assess new medical devices. And within that, there's a regulatory science tool catalog search interface where phantoms, methods, and computational models are available. Currently, when you type in pathology, you will find two tools. One is the EDAP system, created and maintained by Brandon Gallis and the group in Bitzer and OSIL. And there's another group here also from OSIL, which is HimSpec, which is a colorimetric element also maintained by the same group. Both GitHub links and articles are available in that regulatory science tool. And of course, we hope that there will be more tools coming soon. Similarly, I just wanted to point specifically to the Health Policy Navigator. That's a software with specific functions, but also under the same DHCOE, under CDRH is CDRH Learn, which is a complete educational modular system to learn more about regulatory science. Of course, we are all interested in that, so I thought I'd share this. Just to quickly point out that the OSIL division has many, many different branches and subsections, and that's where currently digital pathology lives. And I see Brandon joined, almost perfectly timed for an HTT. And Dr. Gallis, can I hand it over to you? I don't know if you have slides or if you want to just talk.
No, I heard my ears were burning the last minute. And yeah, and you pointed out that catalog. I'm proud to say I also have a statistical package in that catalog for reader studies. And it's really exciting that, that whole thing gets highlighted by the center as being important enough to be produced to that level. And we have created some new review processes to vet these tools. But in terms of other things going on, I wanted to actually prepare something a little bit more concrete for today. But we're trying to get our pivotal study off the ground. And that's what I'm kind of holding back until I have that, so I can really let everybody know and advertise where to go for some training that we have for tumor infiltrating lymphocytes in breast cancer, and then how to, we'll be certainly recruiting pathologists to participate in the study, to understand pathologist variability, but also to provide a methodology and data set for validating AI algorithms. That's kind of the goal of the project, is to demonstrate how to do that well. And we've been working really hard. And hopefully our pivotal study will be off the ground for the new year, but I am not making promises because it's got to be done right. Because the stink of a bad study does not leave your shoe, and so we're going to make sure all the loose ends, it works all as planned, and those loose ends just keep raising their heads. But then the last thing worth mentioning is there's a program at the FDA, the digital transformation. Everything is here. We're trying to make it fit with the 21st century, and there's a symposium coming up, and part of the loose ends I just mentioned are trying to install a whole slide image viewer on an FDA resource called Precision FDA. Thank you. Slide, I think it's Ula. Welcome back, Ula. And so that's a really big thing to have. This is open source software. So finally, we have kind of a real full feature WSI viewer that is open source, and now kind of we're serving it. So our collaborators have been very generous in serving the CA microscope system from Emory. That's where our collaborators are from. But now, and also because of security, we wanted to bring it into something underneath the umbrella of FDA. We were using, for example, Google emails to authenticate people, and people were uncomfortable with that, and including the training accreditors we were talking with. They didn't want to require pathologists to get Google email. So this is a really highlight that probably will show up in that catalog of tools, is this viewer that we are now hosting on Precision FDA, which allows us to collaborate and share software and data on a big platform that's quite secure. So hopefully that's one of my goals, is to ultimately, I'm trying not to pitch it too hard internally so that they don't start timing me on how long it takes, but all the documentation and everything needs to be high quality for it to make it through those reviews. But thanks for the opportunity to share.
No, it's great. Thank you for pushing and moving this forward. As you saw, we have a few slides and a lot of material that people shared to go through. So quick update: the Real World Evidence Program, which is a framework from the FDA, is of course catching on. As you know, first drugs are approved. There was a Real World Evidence New England Journal of Medicine perspective by Dr. Conchato and Corrigan Correa. Great illustration and outline. So I'm very, very happy that this is existing, and I presume real world data, real world evidence will change the field of reg science soon. Just 2 pointers. Similarly, Sidra Kayan and from the group of Greg Pappas have put together sort of a coordinated registry network. So we're in 2 layers deep into the matrix on what is needed to really advance real-world evidence for medical devices. You see, there are things like Delphi method and total product lifecycle management. They developed and devised a maturity framework that I just want to briefly outline here, which is creating sort of from learner through progress to well-managed and optimized promotion of unique device identifiers, for example. There's a huge appendix in this paper published in BMJ Surgery, so definitely worth looking for. A few quick updates from our friends at WHO and IARC. First, congrats to ICR. She has moved on, but her team listed here, including Ian Cree, who will also retire, I think, next year. This is a great paper, BMJ Open, about the understanding of the use of evidence for WHO classification of tumors. And similarly, published as a viewpoint, I believe in NPJ or Nature Precision, is barriers and access to oncology drugs. They put it here as a subtitle, A Global Crisis. This is falling in line with the WHO so-called essentials medicines list, which is explaining what medicines should be considered a human right. And currently the WHO is working on an extension of the list called essential devices or essential diagnostics. And that is, of course, also critically important. I think many of you know why, but once that list is out, we will definitely share this with the group as well. This is the list that the Essential Diagnostics list and urges country to prioritize investments. Of course, the overall incentive here is to create a certain standard that's global. Final thing, which was a lot of work, this is sort of the level, of course, published in the New England Journal when IARC gets together and meta reviews data at a level to really derive the evaluation whether certain things are, whether there is sufficient evidence to support certain prevention measures, in this case for oral cancer. You see, for example, the use of smokeless tobacco as a cancer prevention strategy, which has been proposed, was evaluated as inadequate evidence to support that as a prevention measure. And the work here is just featured that, of course, this is all related to diagnostics and diagnostic criteria. So definitely great updates from the World Health Organization and IARC. Quick excursion into legislative updates. One important update, a beautiful summary here by Health IT Security, is that the White House sets certain standards in cybersecurity, especially for healthcare cybersecurity standards. It is important to note that some of these fall in line with a prior executive order, but definitely an important time, especially in times of Web 3.0, data sharing, information blocking, etc. So it's probably important to keep that in mind. So wanted to briefly point to this excellent summary article. Of course, one element that everyone's wondering here is the VALID Act. I think the 1 or the 3-word or 1-line summary is the story that continues. And as here, It is likely going to be attached, probably in modification to the end of year spending bill. Dr. Califf has mentioned that if that won't go through, that the FDA probably reverts to rulemaking. Whether it's good or bad, we will abstain, but I just wanted to share the news. Related to this, there's an improving diagnosis and treatment through personalized medicine encounter. It's an educational session organized by the Personalized Medicine Coalition, hosted as a congressional educational briefing where, of course, our lawmakers are invited. And you will see here that this is the panel discussion. You see Illumina is represented, there's some translational genomic research colleagues, and this is intended to educate, of course, the Congressional Personalized Medicine Caucus in making good decisions. I put this here because probably VALID will be discussed as well. And then today, Jeff Allen and Lisa Lacasse released, I think through Stat Health and the website and email browsers, better lab test standards can ensure precision medicine. This is tackling some of the issues, including citation of a paper by John Pfeiffer and Barb Zenbauer about reference samples being important to compare NGS tests between LDTs and cleared assays. They also cite, of course, some of the other recent events like Elizabeth Holmes, etc. If you haven't seen it, please take a look. They also refer to the recent annual report to the nation on the status of cancer. I will quickly add this here because it seems that the cancer incidence is really going down. So if you haven't seen that, take a look. One element that is included in the VALID Act that was triggered in an email discussion among about 5 or 6 people in this beautiful PyCC community, which was a question, what's the difference between device and technology? An arguably intricate element. So looking back at the document that was issued on November 14th, 2022, the draft is almost a year old, about referencing the definition of device. Here's the individual sections. You will see highlighted here what the definition of a device currently looks like. This is brand new, hot off the press. You will interestingly find the term technology only once, where it comes as an example of a function or purpose with an intended use when it's penetration beyond the stratum corneum. So when it actually touches patients invasively. Not sure whether that will be incorporated in VALID, but clearly the tech certification program under VALID uses the term tech and technology and a specific definition that's not formalized yet. And of course, optimization of the device definition is clear. So please take a look if you haven't seen this, also just came out. Now, one interesting development that's under legislation is a thing that I would say should be noted in the history books as the so-called Bern decision. That's a magnificent city in Switzerland. Now, pragmatism and speed are now essential is the subtitle for a decision that Switzerland has, per law, decided to accept medical devices with FDA approval for the welfare of their own population. Now, if this shot is not heard around the world, I don't know what will be. This means for the first time that a device definition, which entails, of course, the country of legislation and influence, will actually extend beyond borders. Now, it is important to note that Switzerland is not part of the EU or EEA. Nonetheless, what this creates is an amazing incentive, especially, for example, for low to middle income countries under global financial pressures, to really adopt regulatory paradigms of a first world country without necessarily creating its own regulatory infrastructure. So this is, as you can tell, just a few days old. The Federal Council has adopted this national law, and I think it will definitely require some thinking of what this will mean for other countries and especially financial constraints. So in a way, this is a fascinating compliment from a otherwise relatively politically neutral country. Moving forward, probably the most interesting thing, and this is not legislation, but related to what can happen. Jeff Shuren, roughly speaking, mid or end of October, has, in an interview at a conference in Boston, mentioned a so-called voluntary alternative pathway, and it might lead to what could be considered agile regulation, where the idea is basically to have a system where you voluntarily submit performance updates or otherwise meaningful data to keep it an active interaction in terms of a voluntary alternative submission, rather than a one-time submission with a stamp of approval, creating an ongoing, more like communication in terms of a regulatory oversight. Now, there's not a lot of this available, but definitely another approach to optimize regulation. Now with that, I would like to hand it over to Noor. Noor, are you on? MDIC, for the MDIC updates.
Hi, everyone. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Just a few MDIC updates. We recently released a new framework to hopefully aid medical devices to better meet patient needs and priorities. You can go ahead and read that article right over here. And the BDA framework is right below it. And then as we near the date of the threat modeling boot camps, we would like to go ahead and just reiterate how important threat modeling is to the cybersecurity community. And our boot camps are completely virtual, and they're in collaboration with Adam Shostak, who is of Shostak and Associates, a very well-known threat modeler. You do not need any prior experience within threat modeling. It's a very beginner-friendly course, but it is an intensive course. And then moving on to the next bullet, we released last month the MDIC Industry Benchmarking Report of 2022. This is one of the first benchmarking reports to specifically talk about cybersecurity maturity within the medical device sphere. It is a groundbreaking report, and we are very proud of the collaborative effort that the industry, MDIC, and Booz Allen had to do with it. And we hopefully will be releasing a report every year based on medical device feedback from the survey that is currently on our website. And then upcoming events and news for MDIC include the 3 bullets that you see right below coming soon. We have a landscape report coming out within the next few days. I believe we are finalizing a few things with the FDA, and that will be focused on 5G enabled healthcare technologies. And I will provide that link in December once we release it, along with a computational modeling and simulation, medical device and diagnostics landscape analysis. My coworker Taylor has been diligently working on that, and it will be coming out within the next few days as well, if I'm not mistaken. And as always, if you have any questions or concerns or would like to be involved with the MDIC and the work that MDIC is doing, please feel free to reach out to myself or Jitesh jvtil@mdic.org. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Noor. Times of digital revolutions and Web 3.0, 5G enabled healthcare technologies will definitely be very, very important. And computational modeling and simulation, for those who joined late, I got a few independent messages just to reiterate that's a big element across products, across components and time spans during the regulatory process. So definitely highly relevant. Professional societies have been very active. I think there's too much going on to cover everything, but I wanted to point out a few very interesting elements. Association for Molecular Pathology has proposed a modernization of CLIA regulations. We will definitely not have time to go into this, but it's important to point out. There's a very interesting new council, which is a long time ago since the College of American Pathologists had a new council. And it's my pleasure that Monica de Baca Dorkai, who is chairing this council on informatics and pathology innovation, is on this call today. you see here is the mission statement, and I think it is timely, be near and dear to many of the topics we're discussing here. And then later on, I will also mention that, which is on this slide, that CAP has received a contract with the FDA to deal in a broad agency-wide funding, many different topics that if you're interested, you can see this in this press release from the 4th of November. And jointly, I think, CAP as a group, and of course, fantastic advocate as moving the field forward in many different ways. DPA, same thing, is currently planning next meetings, a lot of activity. And, if you haven't seen it, I think all the materials from Path Vision is uploaded by now. So please take a look at the website. Focus on a few of the projects because they are independently managed and moving forward at different pace and speeds. First, circulating tumor DNA. A recent paper by Kramer et al. I think it's currently only in pre-press. This is on behalf of the COIN Consortium, a community on non-invasive testing, has published in the Journal of Molecular Diagnostics a microcosting analysis that separates the cost here, including failures and overhead and housing, for different types of ctDNA assays, ranging from digital droplet PCR all the way to customized next-generation sequencing. And for those who are interested, here are the prices in euros and dollars, depending on your country of preference. Definitely an interesting approach, also applicable to digital pathology if you're wondering how to parse out possible costs of AI and DP. Next is a pointer to a conference happening in February in San Diego. Definitely one of the liquid biopsy for precision oncology summit. It's the 7th. It's getting bigger and bigger. One of our friends from Friends of Cancer Research, Mark Stewart, I don't know if he can make it to the call. Don't see him on right now, but I think Brittany is on from Friends, so we talk about Friends momentarily. We'll give a talk, so definitely important. And then a rare tumor, pediatric rhabdomyosarcoma, has been published recently by Ruan et al. in a large multi-center study to demonstrate whether it's feasible to also tackle molecular characterization in tumors as rare as pediatric rhabdomyosarcoma, standing representative for many of the orphan diseases. But again, it takes a village, probably more than a village, to make things like that happen. Next project related to the project AI Grant Challenges, which is, can AI Grant Challenges potentially inform regulatory science in AI? The initial results from the Tiger Challenge, which is tumor infiltrating lymphocytes in breast cancer, were released on October 24th. And you can see here this beautiful quote: big compliment to the TILS and breast cancer TILS work group for getting this together. The survival final evaluation leaderboard is shown here. Yes, that's a competition. You see there's the indices and how good everyone is. And of course, that will be published. The data analysis will take quite some time. We're in contact with Roberto Salgado and team. They will definitely present this as part of the project, but I wanted to point to this, that's available. And if you haven't seen it, of course, take a look. The side note on this is we're, of course, actively engaging with the agency to see what it would take to take such a data set, international, very carefully curated, to move it towards a tool type status and possibly add that to the existing list of approaches. Another group that has been active, which is creating a CPIM, that's a specific informational pathway to create new regulatory pathways for non-clinical development of whole slide imaging, for example, in relation to toxicology assessment in compound development. There was a special issue on toxicologic pathology, in this case specifically even of the hematopoietic system, and how to assess this, including several papers on how to use digital pathology and image management and image analysis for this specific use case. So these were some of the project updates. And as a interlude, of course, ethics, diversity, and inclusion, absolutely important. And as you can imagine, many people try to account for some of these topics. One point I wanted to emphasize on the ethical side is a fantastic paper by Nicholas Iofakas from Greece, which is, do we need a Hippocratic Oath for artificial intelligence scientists? And it's important, it's not for artificial intelligence, it's the Hippocratic Oath for the scientists. So please take a look at this, but may increase awareness of the potential lethal threats of AI is probably resonating with some of the things we're talking here in terms of risk and benefit assessments. 2 papers, one tackling multi-level racism and reproductive health disparities, is definitely important and was published in the NPJ Digital Medicine. Same issue, kind of thematically related, was a representational ethical model calibration that uses, I think, UK Biobank data to represent ethical minorities using a computational imputation approach. So definitely very interesting components. And then I'm very happy to show this, which we had a discussion at home about, and this considered as science, but question is, what is the children's gender perception of scientists? Are they male or are they female? And over 5 decades, there was a Draw a Scientist competition. And here are the data. And I leave this up to you. I hope the paper's in the chat to evaluate this. So apparently the gender disparity of whether a scientist is male or female in these drawings decreases with age. But, you know, it's definitely an interesting thing. So now you know what we're talking at the dinner table about. Okay, moving on. Patient advocacy. Of course, we made that to our key aim in 2022, and I hope we were accomplishing this. I see Brittany is on the call. First topic from his Friends of Cancer Research, and they've been very, very active. I already mentioned the email and the Stat News article that came out today. There was a big meeting on November 17th, their annual meeting, and Robert Califf and Dr. Pastor were presenting, and there were 2 panel discussions. You see the titles here, so big applause. Data have been presented on the HRD, homologous recombination deficiency harmonization project. We will also share this data, of course. This is publicly available and illustrates the complexity of harmonizing such a multi-genomic signature. Brittany, do you want to say something about this new project, or?
Sure, I can. I think the HRD poster was a very good lead-in. You know, Friends has been involved in a few efforts over the past few years on looking at kind of the disparate methodology and biomarker assessment, and to work towards harmonizing the methodology to support aligned biomarker measurement and use. And so, as you just pointed out with HRD, as well as our work previously with the tumor mutational burden TMB harmonization project. And so similar to those 2 projects, we're starting to think about and get off the ground about convening some key thought leaders to help map out opportunities and needs for leveraging digital pathology, specifically in clinical oncology drug development, thinking about, you know, some kind of disparate methodology that exists here, its uses in oncology drug development, and working towards potentially coming up with a harmonization project to work towards harmonizing and aligning the disparate methodologies. And so we're in the process of looking for that multi-stakeholder group, and so wanted to reach out through PICC and all of the wonderful collaborators through this organization as well for input and involvement.
Perfect. Thank you, Brittany. Maybe we can do even the short path. Like if you're interested, you can text Brittany directly in the chat, or as always, email PICC or Ulla or myself, and we can establish a connection if so desired. Moving on, the Anatomic Pathology Patient Interest Association has provided general tissue handling guidelines, an arguably tricky topic. I think I saw Eriko on earlier. Thank you so much for spearheading this. It's very tricky and defining this even as a preliminary starting point with appropriate scientific evidence is absolutely critical. And then as a third group, so beside Friends and APIA, I wanted to point to a very interesting bioRxives pre-publication, which comes in this case from a Saudi individual. It's anonymized, but I would say make an entry in your personal captain's logbook, November 30th, 2022, when the first personal reference quality fully annotated genome happened. This is effectively one individual's genome fully annotated to map against. So this is, of course, probably the most personalized medicine approach, and I wanted to just point that out. A few additional resources, and some of these have been really amazing, and I hate to have to jump over these fairly quickly before we get to a few papers that I want to cursory highlight, but it's quite impressive. The first one, a big high five to Heather from Pixel Scientia. They have put together a machine learning tools for pathology images. This is an online growing table as a Google Doc, open, and please take a look. This is annotated by category, link, what framework is used to build, and what a brief description of these machine learning tools. So if you haven't seen it, it's absolutely fantastic. You see here's her email. So it would be great in case you have some additional tools to get on this list. I think it's a growing document, living document, of course, and as a database, absolutely great work. And I would have not been confident enough to start this, because it's a lot. As you know, there's a ton of people working in this space. The next item is from John Snow Labs, a free no-code natural language processing platform that can do all these individual tests on text, or tasks on text, I should say. Since many of you are working on electronic records, on data parsing, etc., I thought this was great that this was shared. Of course, there's also products for purchase, but certain components here of prediction, etc., is absolutely astounding. So you can manage projects and use NLP to automatically parse data. I'm looking for Joe Sirin-Trappen. Is he on yet? He said he might be a bit late.
Yeah, I am
Joe,
on.
you here? Perfect.
Yeah.
I wanted to pitch your offer with two papers here, how to, publish like a boss, i.e. like you, Joe, and, step by step, but I hand it over to you because this is a great offer. Joe?
Oh yeah, thanks. I totally forgot about this one, but yeah, actually I've been invited as an author on regulatory aspects of digital pathology, and this being the group talking about it, I was seeking other people that might be interested in joining me. If you haven't written a chapter, it's a great experience. You get to work with me, and we get to brainstorm together and explore new things, because maybe a lot of the stuff that you get in this meeting here, we were able to incorporate in this chapter. So I'm just sort of soliciting any volunteers out there. Just reach out to me. And in fact, maybe I'll put that in the chat. This is my email. People don't have it. So I'll just put it in. Yeah.
Thank you very much. This is great. Okay, moving on. Deloitte, probably known to many of you, in October 2022, have released 2 Future of Diagnostics papers, one more on personalized, one more on preventative healthcare in Europe. You see it ranges to full set total product life cycle. They dissected apart what the diagnostic industry actually looks like. They used also different funding sources, and whether it's prediction or transparency focused, definitely a very comprehensive, from the Center for Health Solutions with Deloitte, comprehensive report. Definitely interesting, probably for those of you who write grants, to understand what the current landscape of progress is in that relation. These are 2 papers. This is a more or less classic paper from the group around the Dawson the Dawsons, and it was entitled Non-Genetic Mechanisms of Therapeutic Resistance in Cancer. And why I wanted to contrast that with a recent paper, Spatial Genomics, in this case here, for example, showing the genetic heterogeneity in ductal carcinoma in situ, is that, as always, these models have had spatial heterogeneity portrayed, but it wasn't really pointed out what that really looks like. And here is a very sophisticated technology, but the evolution of cancer clones is here shown for DCIS. Great paper clarifying, of course, the important point. I don't like to do this, but I have to, in a way, small and tiny bit of self-featuring and Ulla's work that we did with Drew Williamson and Faisal Mahmood, illustrating that regulatory science can be considered a unifying force for realizing medical AI. And I wanted to just point out to this paper that if you have sort of ideas about what you want to build, for example, with an AI tool, it is good to clarify what you build, for who and why you do it, and how you're actually building it. And we summarized this in 2 pages. It's arguably incomplete. So at some point, Brandon, we should probably have a session to really understand what the regulator thinks about this and where the holes are. And then, we can probably publish a follow-up, but it would be great to share this with your community, with some trainees who are not too acquainted with these concepts. And, of course, take a look at if you haven't seen it. At the same time, moving on to a little bit more therapy-related things and diagnostics here. Of course, mRNA nanomedicine, there was a question whether this has something to do with pathology. Well, the work and the toxicology assessment, etc., of some of these mRNA so-called payloads is important. So keep in mind that drug approval processes usually start with some toxicology assessment, so there might be some overlap. It would be great to think if this is interesting to you. Please take a look. The group around Hamed Tishush is active as always, and they have published a scientific report on bias reduction using histopathology images. You see the workflow here, and definitely important. So wanted to point to this. From the image analytics group, there's Haralick texture features, which is a grayscale image-based set of image features that forms sort of a basic set of features in radiology. I'm not too familiar with it, but it's apparently applicable to MRI and any grayscale images that has morphed into sort of a standard. And this was a paper recently explaining how to pre-process images to enable this analysis of these features. We had 2 melanoma submissions of deep learning. The first one here from many of our friends here, Andrew, also Anand Madabushi, an automated diagnosis of non-melanoma skin cancer. In this case, multi-site cross-organ, meaning also metastasis and primary tumors occurring in different sites. So, and keep in mind, this is non-melanoma skin cancer. So probably pigment versus non-pigment related. So was in medical image analysis. One component that was just recently added and just came out is that HER2 low, which we discussed last time that we may want to start a project on. There's also good data that there's preliminary evidence that this Enhertu, or these novel drug conjugates for HER2, may also show activity in non-breast cancer that are HER2 low. So that's, of course, a paradigm shift, because when you look at the expression of HER2 across organs, many of the former studies have focused on 3+. Now there seems to be a treatment option for lower positivity ranges like 1 and 2+, like shown here. So that might become, at least maybe not the pan-cancer marker, but a multi-organ marker. So definitely important to look out for this. The other melanoma paper, to go back to this topic, in this case from a large collaborative group at Dana-Farber, the Brigham and Harvard Medical School, has put together a series of about 14,000 melanoma from multiple registries and built a predictor for recurrence of early stage melanoma with an ultimate AUC in the 80% or 80 range. Here's the data flow. Definitely a very impressive work. You know, Dr. Semenoff, Peter Sorger, Genevieve Boland all contributed here. Definitely an interesting approach to a survey population with early stage melanoma that may benefit from this. In a collaboration with the European Federation of Laboratory Medicine, there was a session earlier this year in the EFLM annual meeting that was entitled "Where's Laboratory Medicine Headed in the Next Decade? Partnership Model and How to Adopt AI." Many of the processes in the lab are, of course, automated. Some are manual, some are cognitive, and how to integrate this across, let's call it the specimen chain, the process, the transport, etc., was dissected, and we tried to incorporate where can AI help and how. So that was recently published in CCLM. Anna Carabini was leading this, and fantastic overview work. So really good. Next shout out to Norman Survey and team. In this case, from Berlin, Bremen, Lübeck. So German group, Empire, you may have heard of them. They do a lot of educational sessions as well. And I wanted to show two slides on this group because everyone wonders, how can I implement AI with digital pathology, vendor agnostic in my laboratory? And they released a platform on exactly that. What the platform functionally looks like is a global infrastructure with many different workstations where pathologist, here's a screenshot of the workstation itself, has a workbench where you can execute tasks and train and get medical data out. It is, of course, in a way, a software service and a viewer at the same time. So I'm not probably doing it justice by just pointing to it, but this includes all the programmatic interfaces that are needed for this, and it's vendor agnostic. So definitely great accomplishment. And it was published in the Future Generation Computer Systems, and first author is Christoph Janssen. So fantastic work, and I think this will come out. This might be the pre-proofs. I'm not too familiar when they sent it to me, or I don't recall. Chris Austin has put together this beautiful review called Opportunities and Challenges in Translational Science. This diagram entails all steps of the translational pipeline, including the FDA review here in the center, including basic science, targeted pharmacology, of course, lead identification, lead optimization, and post-marketing surveillance, which is a great conceptual figure, especially when you're teaching, for example, translational science. This was a paper published in JAMA about the use of germline genetic risk data or genetic data in clinical trials. And I'll let you read the conclusion here. But it seems that will take a while to become really first and foremost driving. So we need more work. A fantastic overview work on KRAS inhibitors in clinical trial. You see the different KRAS partners here. It's one of the most common driver mutations, and closing in on cancer's deadliest mutations. Of course, a great title. And in case you're interested in the KRAS group, that's it. In the expert review on molecular diagnostics by Jan Jorgensen and Niels Westergaard, they put together sort of the FDA-approved drugs and their corresponding companion diagnostics. If you need that in one table, great resource. In this paper by Helen Sadik, they have identified certain practice gaps in terms of 1,000 non-small cell lung cancer patients and how many actually get treated. This is referred to as the so-called precision oncology attrition rate. where various components called practice gaps affect the ultimate number of patients that would be actually treated. So these are 1,000 eligible patients, but only about a third, so 35% make it on. This attrition rate is, of course, a huge problem because we put so much effort in identifying the patient. So great paper to tackle one of these key elements of precision oncology. Similarly, this is a group from Heidelberg around Peter Lichter and Adam Walder. They put together the 6 riddles of precision oncology. If you haven't seen that, it's beautifully, there's literature citations by famous authors introducing every single chapter. These are the 6 key elements, kind of to like probably a little bit tongue in cheek, like what to do, but 2 boxes clearly outlining what's the value of molecular tumor boards, what are the financial and equity hurdles, so many of the things that we have discussed here. 2 or 3 more papers, and I want to emphasize one approach, multi-site sampling to overcome inter-observer variability in lung adenocarcinoma, large group, amazing effort. Multimodal machine learning, of course, in this case, a very comprehensive so-called scoping review that illustrates where the fusion of multimodal data occurs, across which platforms are used. Of course, Python and intermediate fusion is the most common, but also current limitations of multimodal data sampling. There's multiple transcriptomics papers, and this one here is fantastic in terms of even going as deep as comparing fresh frozen tissue to formalin-fixed paraffin-embedded tissue. Of course, something that's near and dear to pathologists, but seeing that in Cell Reports methods illustrates that pre-analytics really hit a nerve with many people. I think this paper I presented earlier, but I thought it would be great to point to this. One other collaborative community, a large network, UC Genome, you see some of the authors here, has put together a so-called bladder cancer advocacy network to illustrate that urothelial cancer should really be tested for and genetically characterized. And you see here a computational model incorporating both genomic and clinical features predictive of immune checkpoint inhibitor response is their key aim. So multimodality is definitely hitting the field. 2 final papers, medical domain knowledge in domain agnostic generative artificial intelligence, images, of course, with guided language. Principles in this so-called GLIDE element is sort of a state-of-the-art in medical domain knowledge agnostic image analysis, so pointing to this. And finally, this seems like the 80s, but proteins are coming back. This is a group around Michael Snyder from Stanford, who has definitely put together a fantastic interface. And I think the Shiny app, I can maybe paste this. I don't know if that was in the deck that I shared with Ulla. You can explore that data immediately. 2 quick payer updates. I think you know all about the CPT codes that are coming out for Digital Path. I get to that in a second. But one paper by Michael Abramov and Zeke Silva is a framework for AI and healthcare. You see the key questions that would lead payers, for example, to pay for AI tools, and paying for artificial intelligence in medicine, providing an outline over the existing CPT or NTAP codes for the year of reimbursement when that started as an overview. Finally, we have some events. Here's the interactive part. Please put in the chat if you would prefer the PICC meeting to happen on 12/21 or 12/28. We will probably be in a more relaxed setting, and grab a drink of your choice. And please let me know which one's the preference by just typing it in the chat. Finally, pointing to a few important events. You see some familiar names here. There's an upcoming reimbursement opportunity for Digital Path organized by the College of American Pathologists. I think the date here, December 2. So that's coming up. Definitely for those of you who are interested in this, important to attend. There's a this is a regulatory science group. They're looking out for regulatory affairs professional society, and they host a session on December 8th, the so-called FDA forecast, what's new and next in 2023. Definitely worth attending. Brandon has mentioned this, where he will also present some of his work, which is the Digital Transformation Symposium, which is December 5, 6, and 7. But again, keep in mind, this is all digital transformation, not just digital paths. So this is agency-wide, very complicated. There's meeting information on the website. There's a public workshop on the appropriate use of consensus standards. So people who are interested in DICOM may want to attend this. I'll just paste this here. And there's the HTTPS missing. Damn it. So this is December 7th. And if you have not enough to do on December 7th and 8th, there's a FDA Clinical Investigator Training Course, CITC, happening, also organized by the FDA. And finally, I wanted to give a very quick hint that we are in the process of planning a next in-person PICC meeting, probably in March 2023. So if you're going to USCAP, that's this week from the 11th to the 16th. So we're probably planning somewhere in the DC area. So the USCAP meeting will be in New Orleans, so different, but the weekend before or after is currently something that we're trying to run by FDA, MDIC, and the various people. So very likely afternoon plus a full day, or 1.5 day meeting in person with various topics. So probably more to be discussed what we will handle there. And with that, we end today's steering committee meeting.